everyone, please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to your host, Jason Elliott.
All right. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for having me out here. I'm super excited, a little nervous. I haven't actually done anything like this before, so it's my first time. Also, hello to everyone watching online. Appreciate you tuning in. Kind of want to do like a bit of a casual chat through Beast Games. If you haven't seen the show, it's a show that we did on Amazon Prime with Mr. Beast crew, that kind of thing. I've worked with them for a number of years, since around mid-2021, and then toward the later end of my time with them, we picked up a show, got signed on to do it with Amazon Prime, which was a really, really fun experience, and a lot went into it that a lot of people don't really know about. So I kind of wanted to share that with you guys today. So the way we're going to do it is probably just a kind of a bit of a scrub through the first episode, a little bit of a stop and start type thing, and I have a few pictures and stuff I'll share with you along the way. I'll try to get to a Q&A stuff at the end, but there's a lot to go through, so we might not make that. Also doing another session today at 2 o'clock in room 105, so if you make it over to that, we'll have a little bit more time to chat with everybody. So let's get started. Real quick, how many of you have seen the show, though? Raise your hand. Oh, perfect. Yeah, all right. So we're just going to start from the beginning. I'm just going to kind of drag stuff over and kind of hit play here and jump right into it. All right. So the very first thing you see is this shot right here.
Of real money,
kind of let
the
it play
largest grand prize in entertainment history. And competing for this $5 million are these 1,000 contestants. Go!
All right. So right there is a couple unique things that not a lot of people really realize. There was about 6 to 7 months of planning went into that single shot right there. It was pretty crazy what actually happened ahead of that. So let's see if I can back it up just a little bit. The other part about this is that while we did do some VFX in episode 1, a lot of this particular shot was no VFX. It was just straight right out of camera. We did this orbit shot. We actually used a cable cam system that flew around this giant pile of money and a similar setup here to what we have on stage. So that's why we brought these with us today, so you can kind of see a little bit of the kit that we used. These were 2 of our build-outs that we used on throughout the show. A lot of our main cameras were Arri Alexa Minis, paired with a number of different lenses, one being the Canon Cine Servo, the 17 to 120, and then all of the B-roll of the show was actually shot on the brand new C400 and the Canon CN Primes. So that was a lot of fun going into that, and then real quick we'll skip ahead to this next part, just where I can get to some. So this room, I cannot speak enough to the scale of this place. It was one of the most massive buildings I've ever set foot into. And I've got some pictures I'm going to share with you really quick to kind of give you an idea of that. So one of the hardest things about the show was finding somewhere to film it. Months and months ahead of time, we scoured the country for locations. We went East Coast, West Coast, Middle America. I mean, I was on airplane after airplane, touring stadiums, touring different arenas, different convention centers, all that type of stuff. And we had a bit of a unique requirement. We needed a place to put 1,000 contestants in there, but it needed to be uninterrupted. So it needed to be a fairly large space. Come to find out, there's not that much in existence in the entirety of the USA that would fit something like that. Along with ancillary stuff. So we also needed support. We needed places to put people, hotels, that type of thing. We finally landed on this place. And to give you an idea, so that's what it looked like when we had our contestants in there. But before, I don't know if you can see this that well, was this. Just this giant empty room. It had about 40-foot high ceilings. I think total square foot was somewhere in the range of like 86,000 square feet. And then we converted it into our set. So it's a pretty incredible place that we just kind of got lucky and found. I think it's pretty well known now. We filmed a lot of the show in Canada, so that's where we found this set at. And show you a little bit of the progression of the build out for that. So ahead of that, it looked like this. So this is a bit of the skeleton of the episode 1 set. which got converted into that, and we lived into this space for pretty much the majority of episode 1. So I want to keep going for just a quick second. Show you a little bit more on full screen there. There's a couple of things I want to do.
What you are witnessing is real. A record-breaking number of 1,000 players is currently stampeding this arena. But only one of these 1,000 people you are seeing will have what it takes to beat everyone around them and take home this generational wealth of $5 million.
So fun fact, that's actually $5 million in cash right there. It's real money. I just want to give you another perspective of all of these people in there. There were legitimately 1,000 contestants in this room. And in the early days when we were talking about it, we were like, wow, that's insane. How are we going to film this? And that's where I really kind of buckled down and started planning in about, I want to say January, February of 2024, of what it was actually going to take to bring this to life and what's going to make it happen. And one of the standout things was we knew that every one of those pillars, all 1,000 of them, that we wanted to have an individual camera on it that the contestants could film themselves with. So we eventually turned to GoPros for that and got 1,000 of those in there, got those installed. But then came the ancillary stuff. What was our primary filming source? And if you've seen some of the news, you know we have a Guinness World Record for the most cameras ever used on a TV show. The number that is in the record is 1,107. And actually, it was more than that. They just didn't give us the record for it. So interestingly enough, the way that they validate the records are, I had to go in and get a timeline of every single camera angle on one single timeline. You had to be able to draw a line through it, and there had to be footage at a given time. So not all cameras were recording constantly at the same time. So we actually had more installed, more working, but any one given moment, the most I could get was 1,107. But we did have more. That consisted of, let's see if I can get the numbers correct. It was 43 Arri cameras, which were a combination of Alexa Minis, Alexa Mini LFs, and Amiras. And I'll get into a little bit of why we did the difference of those. Had a number of drones in the air. We had a number of PTZ units from Panasonic. They were the the UE 150s. And then, of course, we had our C400. And then we had a number of FX9s that were gathered around. We basically had those bolted in the ceiling as our lock-off wide shot type of thing. The reason we had so many, and I've been questioned a lot of like, why so many cameras? It's overkill, especially cinema grade stuff. Why on earth would you film a TV show on that level? And it's more about our approach to reality content or competitive content. We kind of have this ethos of we wanted to be a bit different than a normal reality show. So typical reality shows are a bit produced, especially the competition stuff. You have people come in and go, say these lines or go chat with these people over here. For us, it's more of we're going to put our players in an area. We're going to give them a game or rules or whatever, but within that, they can do whatever they want. They can say what they want, do what they want. They can play the games however they want. The hard part about that is we now have to capture it. And we want to capture it in a very authentic way. In order to do that, we need as many cameras as we can possibly get because we don't know where things are going to happen, when they're going to happen, how it's going to happen, but we do know we want to be ready for it. And throughout my time at the main channel at Mr. Beast was really good training for that and a learning experience as we did videos that had more and more competitors each. I think we maxed out at 200 or 300 cameras on a Mr. Beast video. So a little bit more on this, but that was essentially the thing because in my opinion, again, I want to capture all this content and we'll see a little bit of it as we go through, but I don't want to just capture it for the sake of capturing it. I want to capture it well and I want the shots to look good. The entire idea for this show was a little bit practice and a little bit theory of how we wanted to present it. So it had to be a bit of a hybrid show, part YouTube, part traditional television. And it was important that on a visual level that made sense. So we filmed it in both ways. In fact, the show, if you watch, kind of follows a bell curve. In the very beginning, it's very much a YouTube video kind of thing, just really polished. As it gets towards the end, it feels more TV show. And that was very intentional all the way throughout, from filming it to editing it, all of that. But with the filming. So we wanted an elevated experience over the YouTube videos. So higher picture quality, all that went into that, better cameras, that sort of thing. The other part was how we filmed it. And not just a bunch of cameras and all of that, but composition. So when we first met all of our camera operators, there were about 50 of them on day one, we had a discussion. And it was, okay, a lot of you guys and girls are from different backgrounds, you film different things, but this is kind of how we want to make sure we film this. When you are filming something, take your time, stop and think about your frame. A lot of times in reality TV, you just kind of shoulder up, you go, you shoot something, and you just get what you get. But I was more focused on stop, look, check your frame, make sure your composition's good. We went for a tight headroom as much as we could throughout. Look at the background. Make sure the background makes sense as to what the person in your frame is doing. If it's not good, take the time to move. Luckily, we had enough cameras that if you missed something while you're moving, odds are we got it on another angle, so you're okay. And really gave the camera operators the freedom to move around and be a little bit more artsy with their shots. And I think that really kind of shows true throughout the rest of the show as you see it come through. There's some really, really beautiful shots in here. And wasn't really sure if that was going to work. It was a bit of a theory in the beginning, but I definitely think it paid off. And we had an amazing team. I can't speak to that enough of our crew that we had on there. There were thousands of people that worked on the show. Our camera team, I think, totaled well over 100 people at one point between the ACs and our engineers and our grip and lighting team. But they were really game for that, which was really kind of refreshing to have that kind of energy coming from the crew. It made my job much easier for that.
I grew up homeless, and now I want to help other homeless kids. And that $5 million would mean everything to help me get there.
So as you're watching through, you'll see the way the lighting feels, you'll see the way these shots feel, the composition of it. There are a lot of center frame shots, but we do also get away from that as much as we can and work more on conversational elements once we get out of the intro part of it. And that was a big part as well for me for the story was when you are filming people, try to see who they're talking to and include them in the frame or work with another camera operator nearby so they could also get that coverage as best as you possibly could. So we're into the teaser now coming up. You see a lot of cool stuff down the line. I remember the first time I saw this teaser, my hair stood up on my arms. It was quite exciting. So these hero shots, interesting thing here. We actually shot those ahead of shooting episode 1, and it was kind of on a whim. It occurred to me one day that when we're looking at a traditional audience on Amazon Prime, there's no guarantee they're going to instantly know who all our characters are. If you're not a fan of the YouTube channel and you don't watch that, then you probably don't have an idea. So it was important to introduce those. So we quickly did a setup off to the side, shot a few interesting hero shots just to have, and turns out we ended up needing them. So it was pretty cool. Let's see. Okay, we're going to skip ahead here to one of the shots that I think most everyone is super familiar with, and it is this FPV drone shot of these players dropping. And I'll see if I can skip ahead and find it. It's a little ahead here. I thought about doing timestamps for all this, but okay. So this shot coming up, this isn't my YouTube Premium apparently, so apologize for the ads. Okay. I'll just let this play if you haven't seen it already. All right, we'll stop there. The funny thing is when I first saw that shot, I saw the I saw the recording of it. I was like, oh my God, people are going to think this is fake. This does not look real. It looks like an animated shot. And the crazy part is it was 100% real. It was 100% filmed one time. We had one shot at it. So a little backstory on the shot. It was planned, as far as the drop goes, we called it the domino drop. We knew we wanted to drop an entire row of people in that domino fashion. On the tech side of it, the guys that did the actual trapdoors on the thing worked it out. They got their timing down, all of that stuff. But when it came to filming it, like, okay, well, how do we film such a thing and actually show it off? There's this unanimous thing almost that we knew we wanted to do an FPV shot. And we're like, okay, that's an insane FPV shot to get. And you literally only get one chance. There's no time to rehearse it. Of course, we can't rehearse it with the players because they're going to get to do it one time and that's it. And ahead of that, it was not enough time to do like a rehearsal with our stand-ins type of thing. So I knew I needed a really good FPV pilot. And there was a guy that we work with, his name's Josh Medlin. He worked with us a lot on the channel, and I call him and I'm like, hey man, I need you to fly to Canada. Can you do this shot? And we had just used him a lot on a couple of videos right before that, and I mean, worked him to death. We probably worked him 3 or 4 weeks straight, and he was like, man, I'm tired. I want to go home, you know, take a break, take a vacation. And I was like, please, I need you to come up here for this one shot. I just do the shot, you can go home, I don't care. And he agreed and came up, and we had a discussion about it. And first we were a little unsure how we wanted to actually film it, because you think it's just an FPV shot, you see it, but really we wanted to take it a step further. So an interesting part, I'll go to the beginning, because this first frame is really, really important. Normally when you would have thought about doing this as an FPV shot, you probably would have been eye level, straight on with the players, and then chase them as they fell straight down the line. But I wanted to change that up a little bit. The drop in the start of this drop is so important that I wanted to focus solely on these first couple of players. And what I was worried about was if we did too wide and we went too far out, that one, it would lose the impact of this, because the room is so vast, you kind of get lost in the wide shots. It's hard to tell where you are in time and space, and the scale of it doesn't always play through well on camera. So the last thing I wanted was this epic shot to just feel kind of weak on camera. So we decided on more of a top-down start and a little bit tighter than what we normally would have done. The risk of this was the ramp into flying. He didn't have a lot of time to judge how fast to go down the line. So again, that one shot, that one opportunity we had at this was really critical to get it right. I think the top-down nature of it also kind of helped, because it helped him ramp into the speed to go down, and you could see a little bit more of the players in that line to gauge his speed on. But when you first see this, your eyes are immediately drawn to that first player. And I think that was the takeaway from that, and that was the really important thing, and what I was super happy that came from this. So slow motion coming into that, you immediately see what's happening. You're going, okay, and then we reveal the rest of the row, and we follow them all the way down. This is one of my favorite shots of the show. So I just thought I would share that with you. Okay, what's next? So shortly after this, one of my additional theories about the show will come up here in a second. One of the games we played was this building blocks game. If you're familiar with the game, the players had to build a number of blocks on their towers, and then had to there was like the first 100 that fell got eliminated, I think it was. So you didn't want to be those people. Now where this got interesting, and as I was mentioning earlier, is taking the show a step further visually. We didn't want it to feel so much like a reality show, so much like your typical competition show. I really wanted to insert some beautiful cinematics into it, kind of thread that needle into what a movie would feel like in some places. Of course, we couldn't make the entire thing like a movie because it wouldn't make sense. People wouldn't relate to it. But there were moments, like this one coming up, that it did make sense and it felt right. So you see it coming up here in just a moment. I think I skipped too far back, but as the players happen, as they went through this shot really made sense to me and kind of proved a theory that I had, and I was really excited to see it made the cut, this right here. So this shot is actually real time. That's a real player captured in the moment. So while that was a quick shot to see in the show, it actually had a lot more impact and a lot more meaning than you would see it at face value. It added this bit of beautiful character to the show, this super intimate moment with this challenge. And for me, the fact that we got that in real time with a real player, they didn't stack those blocks a second time. We didn't go up to them and go, hey, could you do that again? No, that got in the moment as it was happening. That was so important to me to have. How we got to that point, how we even got that shot. In the beginning, I knew that I wanted what I called a cinematics camera operator. And the funny thing is when we were originally talking about it with production, they thought that and the B-roll person were the same person. And I was like, no, it's two separate people. So basically I put B-roll as object-based, scenery-based items. And then I put our cinematics as content-based. And I have a friend of mine who's a DP out in LA. I called him up and I was like, hey, I've got this crazy idea. I was like, I want to bring you on the show. We're all going to be shooting it like a reality competition show. But all he does is narrative commercials or films and that type of stuff. So I was like, I want you to come out. I'll give you a kit, a camera, whatever you want. And I want you to film it like you would film your narrative stuff, if you can. I was like, I don't know if you can or not. I was like, let's say we're doing a setup. We have two people talking. We're doing typical reality coverage, 2 or 3 cameras. I want you to look at that scene and go, how would I shoot that if I was shooting it in a film? Then go, can I get my equipment in there? Can I get an angle that makes sense, a composition that makes sense? Is the lighting okay? Can I get all that in there in time? You know, there's a big checklist he had, and that was our challenge with that. It was like, well, it sounds impossible, because by the time you get all that, the scene's going to be over. And luckily, he was down to try. And one of the things I brought him out on a couple videos ahead of the show to kind of practice and see what, you know, non-restricted content, how it can play out, because we shoot 360 where just anything can happen anywhere. So he actually spent some time with me ahead of the show, spent some time with me in the Vegas show as well, and went through that and did a lot of practice stuff. And to my surprise, the theory paid off and it worked, and we got beautiful shots like this. And they're sprinkled throughout the show. You'll see them pop up. They're just quick snippets that just come in out of nowhere like this, and these were all from him. I think skipping way ahead, if you've seen episode 8, one of the interesting shots of the guy that took all of the money, I think he took like the major chunk of the money in episode 8. He's sitting on his bed on his knees with the pile of money going, and there's this beautiful dolly pull away from it with a match cut to the girl in the next room and another dolly pull. So he did those shots like that. And props to him, because he went out and just grinded that out. I had no idea if that worked. I mean, honestly, I was like, you're probably going to try this 100 times and maybe get one good shot. And turns out he got a lot more than that. So to me, that was an important thing to do and something I had to push for really, really hard to get through. But I understand it was a big risk for production. So I'm grateful that they let me take that risk. But at the same time, it was kind of a crazy idea that just happened to pay off. But I think that's an important thing when you're looking at shows like this and you want to do things differently. Inevitably, in the end, you have to take some risks to try new things and that sort of stuff. So we'll keep going here, because right at the end of this is another kind of intentional element that you don't really think about. I'll breeze through this really quick. So at the end of the blocks challenge, we kind of have a very intense vibe shift after this Taco Bell ad. Now I'm hungry for lunch. I signed into my YouTube Premium. I don't know why it's not working. But nevertheless. Okay, so the timer runs out. Suddenly, screen goes red, and we're now in an anamorphic state. Interesting part about this. So I'll back it up very quickly as you can see it happen. The black bars slowly slide in, and then now we're anamorphic for a little bit. The reason that was important is this next shot, this was actually shot true anamorphic. So we actually had anamorphic lens. The camera was set up in that sense on our Steadicam. Wanted to do this on a couple of things throughout the show. Basically, every introduction of a new set and a new challenge, we went anamorphic on. And the reason I wanted to do that is it's not a normal thing you would see in competitive reality television. But I knew that these moments were super important. And I knew our content, the way our content comes together is it's a lot. A lot of content comes at you, and it comes at you really fast. And sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. I wanted to take these moments to at least visually bring your attention back and go, okay, hey, I might have drifted off, but this moment's important. Let me pay attention again. And so just a subtle signifier to that. We kind of forced the edit on this in that we shot true anamorphic, but we only did it on one camera at a time. And if you notice these other shots, these are not. So we were like, okay, how do we transition into this moment? And that's why we did the black bar squeeze in. You see this a couple of times throughout the season. It's not in every episode, but there's quite a few episodes that we do this into, but it's only at very specific moments throughout, and then we eventually cut out of that in the same way we got into it. So again, another theory. I was like, well, I don't know if this makes sense. You know, am I crazy thinking too far ahead on this? But it was something I felt kind of confident about and wanted to push through and do it anyway. So the interesting part about the end of this is, so that's actually a really cool shot. So given this creative freedom to our camera operators again, it was really, really awesome for us because you ended up with beautiful shots like this. Now, something like this wouldn't normally end up in a show like this, but we felt it important to at least film these type of ways because we wanted this type of storytelling to make it into our show. Now, I talked about the cameras. 1,107 plus cameras. They had to be recorded somewhere, and this is one of the rooms that it was. So this is our control room. It's funny that we actually got to show this in the show because normally you would never see this part of it. And we had a literal army of story producers, tech people, technical directors, all of that in this room. So the first, I think 6 or 7 rows, that's our story producers. And essentially they each got a feed of a chunk of an area in order to monitor. So all of those cameras, not the 1,000 GoPros, we didn't route those anywhere, but all of the other cameras all routed back into this room and they could see them. So they had well over like 100 and 120 cameras that they could keep eyes on at any given time. We would give people chunks to monitor, and that's kind of how we tracked our story. But it was just a unique angle that we got to actually show this room, show it off. You see the wall in the front, that's where our technical directors sat, and our other directors and our executive producers and everything. And it was kind of funny because I don't know if you've ever seen a multi-view. Usually it's 4, 6, maybe 8 cameras. This was like the multi-views were so tiny because we had to squeeze so many into them. I don't know how they technically did it, but it was kind of funny to look at the same time. It's something I wasn't used to seeing. But this room also tells another story of our technical team. So we had a huge engineering challenge with the show. How do you route that many cameras into a control room? How do you monitor it? What do you do with the footage? Because only about, I think it was 19 of our cameras recorded to memory cards. The rest of them all went to record decks. So they had to get signaled out. And we had an absolutely massive intake. We basically did our DIT live on Saturday. Our ingest went straight into servers. So we had an entire company set up just to ingest all of our footage. And our engineering team, which was bunch of crazy people, if you ask me, because of what they were able to pull off. I mean, it was literal miracles with getting our cameras installed, getting the routing done, and then routing it back to somewhere like our control room. And this was actually one of 3 control rooms that we had on our set. So super impressed by those guys, super grateful that we had that team, and magicians, if you ask me. So, all right, we're going to continue on. So if you remember earlier, I talked about the camera crew and the different backgrounds that they all had. So that comes into play. I'll skip ahead. I'm just going to let this play in the background as we talk about it. Their backgrounds came into play in a very interesting way. And again, this was a bit of another theoretical thing I had. So in this giant space, actually, once we get to a wide shot, I'll pause it. Okay. Around the perimeter of this room were 19 elevated platforms, and on those platforms were large lens-based cameras. So it was on a tripod. That was where our mirrors were, and we had big 300 or 400 mil lenses on there. And that was so they could shoot across the massive space that this was. They could go hunting, and they were still able to get some nice close-ups on people in that action. But basically, the entire 360 of the room was covered with these operators. They were elevated, I think, about 8 feet off of the platform itself, and then plus their lens height over that. When we talked about who to hire for that process, that part became really important to me. We had a local production company in Canada that actually found a lot of our operators for them. And I went to them and I asked, I was like, hey, this might sound a little crazy, but I know we're getting your typical TV operators to film all our handheld units, your typical guys that do reality shows or competition shows. But for everybody that's doing these, our hard cams is what we call them, I want to have sports people, people who film hockey, people who film baseball or film basketball. Because, in my mind, was that they are not only used to that kind of configuration of a camera. I mean, it's what we have back here. I mean, you have the big camera, monitor up top, you've got your controls down low on a tripod, you're behind it. So they're used to something like that. It's not too foreign to them. Additionally, they're used to being up behind those cameras for hours on end, you know, so they're kind of in that realm already. But the next part was where it made the most sense. As those camera operators, I don't know if you've ever filmed sports or stuff like that in here. I did years ago in my career. And all you have is your lens. And you zoom super, super far away, and you see people, and they're doing things, and you have no idea what they're doing, no idea what they're saying. You can't hear them. You have some communication to the control room. Maybe they'll direct you to some stuff, but often you go hunting for shots. And one of the things you get really good at is how to analyze content or a conversation from afar. You can look at a group of people, judge by the facial expressions, judge by where they're looking, the way their mouth is moving, that they're either talking to this person next to them, 3 people down next to them, all kinds of number of things, talking to themselves, who knows. But you get good at analyzing those situations. And to me, that was a perfect skill set for this. Because while all of our players were mic'd, all 1,000 had a lav on them, our camera operators didn't have access to those feeds. So they're shooting in the dark. They're looking into a massive swath of people trying to find content, having no idea what's actually happening, what's being said, that sort of stuff. So it's very important to me that that skill set came into play here, and we could zoom across this room, find a face, find a conversation, and then transition into who they're talking to. And so throughout episode 1, you'll see a lot of that. I wish I'd marked a spot specifically for that, but our camera operators will speak of it right there. They'll transition away from a person over to who they're talking to. They'll find that action. It also goes into how we got kind of, I want to say, almost lucky for some of our reaction shots, especially when we started doing the bribes. We got the button pushes, not just on our wide cameras, but on our mobile units. And I give that credit to those camera operators of being able to look out into the crowd and kind of predict that these people are about to do something. And they would set up the shot and do a really, really good job on capturing all of that. So a little bit of the secret sauce of how all of those like long lens shots came to be. All right. I'm actually going through this quite quickly. So we might have time for Q&A at the end. I love it. So we're going to speed through the rest of this. And something that is kind of interesting, and as we watch this beautiful ad, YouTube Premium is worth it, I promise. There we go. So as people watch the show, each episode, like I mentioned before, goes more and more into transition from the YouTube world into the television world. But I think we maintained our quality through the entirety of the show. I love that clip. And that part was really, really important for me. And that's why we went with the camera setups that we went with, the lenses that we went with. And we maintained that setup all through the show. So our Alexa Mini LFs always shot our talent. They always had a specific lens on it. Our Alexa Minis always shot contestants in a certain way. They always had the same lens on it. Our aerial cameras always had these cine zooms on them. Our B-roll always maintained this with a set of actual primes on it. So we wanted to maintain this consistency through the entirety of the show. That way, in the end, we could hopefully maintain a look. Now, props to our editors for chopping all this footage together, and to our colors, who I think did a fantastic job. But an interesting fact about the show is, to me, I think texturally, visually, it's very high quality. But one thing that most people don't even take a second to realize is that the entire show is only in HD. So in an age of 2024, 2025, everything is 4K now. All your shows are 4K. And to me, this show holds up neck and neck with all of those, even though it's only HD. I attribute that to a number of things. Everything that goes into making a shot cinematic, right? All of those elements, our set design, our lighting, our cameras, our lenses, the way we shot, all of those things. And to me, honestly, I was kind of shocked that it looks this good in HD. You wouldn't think that. You would think this is a higher res show. But I was really proud of the way it came out in that only being HD, still looked as quality as it did all the way through, and especially when you get into the later episodes. And now the talent cameras, I will say those were UHD. Anytime you see one of the talent members on there. So to give you a preview of the rest of it, we'll just scrub ahead. There's a teaser at the end of the rest of it. Saying goodbye to that set was really tough because we put a lot into it. It was pretty incredible. So this was our city set we showed at the end of episode 1. We spend a lot of time here later on. The importance of this set to us was that it needed to be incredibly multi-purpose. Filming this set was incredibly difficult because of its size. It was a massive, massive space, as you can see here. But the layout of the space was also really special in that it led our contestants to create content more in various spaces. One of the first drafts of the city actually was just these bunkhouses and the towers, and that was it. That was the only spaces you had. And I remember speaking with our designer and kind of having a conversation about, hey, a lot of these shows that you see are very confined. I don't want to name any shows or any of that stuff, but you'll see them, they go into a room, and that's primarily where the show takes place. They might go to do some challenges or some things here and there, but a lot of it takes place in this one singular room, whether it's a bunk room or inside of a house or whatever that may be. And to me, it really limits you creatively, both filming it, but also with the content that can potentially happen in those spaces. So one of the things I almost, in the show, completely forget about the interior of these bunk rooms. I think we might briefly show at the beginning of episode 2, but you never see the interior of those again, all the way until episode, I believe it's episode 8. And that was very intentional. We wanted our players to come outside, to come to these other areas. We built this giant expansive city, but we gave them areas that they could now go and explore. There's picnic tables, there's a restaurant, there's a basketball court, giant chess set, there's a helipad they could go hang out on, ping pong tables, you name it. It was all in this space. Why that was important for me was because now, as our contestants split off, they start making their friends groups, they start going to strategize how they're going to play the game, that sort of stuff. We, of course, go cover that, but now as we cut between those groups, it's a different environment for each one of them. It's a different mini location rather than inside the same room trying to do the same thing. Oh, well, there's a set of bunk beds behind this person over here. There's also a set of bunk beds behind this person over here. It becomes super repetitive and boring. But at least here, I think it kept it alive, able to stretch the entertainment value of it out a little bit more and keep it a lot more interesting. All right. I think that's it for the show screening of it. Kind of blazed through this. So I guess we'll get ready to do some Q&A if you guys have questions. Does anybody have questions? I know not everybody is super brave about questions, so if you find something later that you want to ask, feel free to hit me up on social media. I'm either on Instagram or LinkedIn. I always reply to everyone, so hit me up on that if you think of something later. Otherwise, if you can make it to the 2 o'clock session, we're going to be in there. It's going to be a little bit more low-key, just kind of a sit and chat about, like, how did I end up here, right? What was my career like? How did I get to this spot? What was it like working with content creators? A little more in depth than that. So here, I get to speak quickly. I know that was also in the title of this. So like I'd mentioned before, I worked with Jimmy for a number of years ahead of this on the main channel. So for me, it's like another person. Right? I think I had a unique insight into that coming into the show because he and I had a bit of a relationship to where we could communicate in a certain way, and it was very efficient and very fast. Otherwise, if you ever do down the line with your careers, coming into working with content creators or influencers or those type of things, it's honestly like any other celebrity. You very professional, generally speaking. And they look at you as the expert in your field, especially if you're a cinematographer or a director and that type of thing. So they're usually open to, because I've worked with a number of other creators through the years, and they're usually very open to hear your ideas and your opinions and that kind of stuff on like a technical level. So I think I'm going to save a lot of these pictures for the 2 o'clock session too, because I have a ton of photos and about some testing and stuff that we did. Because honestly, an hour's time is not enough to go through everything, and a lot of it is pre the show. So remember, I started working on the show in November, December of 2023, and we shot in August of 2024. So I worked on it for almost a year ahead of actually filming it. And a lot of that was camera testing, lighting testing, angles, deciding how many cameras we want, location scouting, all of that stuff. So our lighting for episode 1, I think, was super unique as well. A little quick snippet about that. The lights that you see in the ceiling, I think I closed the tab, but there weren't actual lights. They were LED panels from an LED video wall. So there were 3-foot by 3-foot squares that we hung in the ceiling in a grid all the way down. And the reason we did that was, actually, I think I can share you a quick picture of those. It basically stemmed from our initial lighting test. I think I can share this. So this is one of our initial pillar tests. We built 6 pillars. We're like, okay, how are we going to light this? How are we going to film this? We did this in a warehouse somewhere way ahead of production. As you'll notice, that one pillar has the inlaid LEDs. So we knew as a design element that was going to be our primary thing of every single pillar was going to inevitably have those. So I needed to see what effect does that have on the players standing on that. So we did everything from that's the only light source you get is the light within the pillar to we turn those off. Now you have a light that's above. We did hard lights from above. We did soft lights from above. We eventually did more testing with all of the pillars having the LED lights. And what we discovered was the best looking scenario was actually just the lights in the pillar. It looked the coolest. It was super dramatic, but it was too dramatic. So we knew we had to bring something up. But every time we brought in lights from the top, hard lights were out. The shadows just didn't make sense. It didn't feel right. And it required a lot more lights. So we knew we couldn't do that time and budget-wise. So we did soft lights. But I knew I only needed like a fixture in the ceiling. Let's say if I put your typical 2x1 panel in the ceiling, it would be on at like 1% or 2% power. And that would be enough to give me the even lighting I wanted, because I still needed the bottom to be the primary. I just needed a little fill from the top. Putting a bunch of those panels, whether it's Sky panels or any other brand, would have been really, really expensive. There'd have been hundreds and hundreds of them. And over the course of the time that we had that set, it just financially didn't make sense. So come to find out, large pixel pitch LED panels are actually really soft from a distance. So we got this crazy idea to go, okay, well, we're going to use these as lights. And that's what we did. The scary part about that is, again, that was another theory. We didn't actually know that that would work or not until it was too late to change it. So we did some testing here. It was like, okay, it looks like it's going to work, but I'm not entirely sure. And then I remember the day we actually turned all the lights on the stage. It was pretty incredible. I was like, oh my God, this actually works. I can't believe this. Thank goodness. So this was a little bit more of an advanced test that we did once we got more fixtures and stuff from that. So, okay, I think we got about 15 minutes left. So down to jump into some questions if you all want. Yes.
Hi, we have a student here. Her name is Kay, and she's from the film department. And she says, thank you so much for sharing your experience. What was the biggest challenge that you faced when shooting, and how did you overcome that challenge?
I'd say the biggest challenge would be blending with blending a YouTube mindset and a traditional mindset into one. How to really create a hybrid production, because it's never been done before. And on one end, we had some people that were really hardline. This has to be YouTube, and on the other end, we had some people. It has to be traditional. It's got to be a regular TV show. But thankfully, we had a lot of people that were able to meet in the middle, and meeting those people, finding those crew that believed in our vision, allowed us to believe in their vision, and really paid off in the end, I think. For me, that was the hardest thing, because it was super scary. It was like, oh my gosh, is this gonna does this make sense, kind of thing. But we ended up getting really lucky with a really amazing crew set that made that part really easy in the end. Anybody else? Oh, there's a microphone. Okay, perfect. There's a microphone at the back, at the top of the stairs, so if you want to run up there, I think it's for the live stream so they can hear you as well, and we'll ask away. And again, immediately after this, while you guys are going over there, I'll be out at the creative experience for about 30 minutes. So if you want to stop by there at the Canon table, in which, by the way, a huge thanks to Canon. They're the ones who invited me out here to join you guys today, and brought all these fancy toys for us to take a look at as well. So.
Hello, yeah, I had a question on what was your philosophy when it came to choosing who to capture, since you guys had so many participants? Like, what was sort of the philosophy of who we focus on? How much time do we spend on them because just the sheer mass amount of people you had?
That was actually really tough because we didn't know in the beginning. We had no idea. I know our story producers had kind of picked a core group of people out that they wanted some of our team to kind of focus on, but we really was in the moment. And that's where I think the credit goes to those operators I was mentioning about, of finding that action. And when they would see stuff from afar, if they couldn't get a good shot on it, they would communicate to the rest of our team that we would then send people in on the ground or try to find another alternative shot. But it was really just kind of in the moment. It was a bit of cover everything. And actually, when you see the last episode and you see the winners, the first and second place players, we actually have footage of them all the way back in episode 1 of really good content of them just hanging out and chatting. And I think it was that of, sure, we did a bit of cover everything, but there was a moment that they showed promise even all the way back in episode 1, and our operators picked up on that. And the way I ran it was a bit of, like I said, creative freedom. Is if you see that stuff, go for it. I don't want to micromanage you guys. Feel free to shoot what you see fit. Just, again, think about, as you're shooting it, how you're shooting it, and let's make sense in that. So does that answer?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Being the DP of this show, did you collaborate any with the wardrobe on what color the contestants were going to wear and all that?
Not necessarily collaborate. We did a few tests in the beginning, and in fact, that's why in that one test you saw they were originally supposed to be red, and then they went to blue, and I have no idea why. But they at least let us know, and we did do camera tests on the wardrobe to make sure we weren't going to be totally screwed down the line, kind of thing. So.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Hello. I have one question. What were the biggest cinematography lessons you learned from this project?
The biggest cinematography lessons from this? Trust your team. Mm-hmm. I don't know everything. There's a lot more people that are out there way more talented than I am. But we found a really solid team, and recognizing when the team is really good at a certain thing and setting them free. I can speak to episode 6 on that, the monster truck pull. One of our camera operators just came up and was like, hey man, can I get my rollerblades out and chase these down with a Ronin? I was like, heck yeah. What do you mean? Let's go. That sounds amazing. So, and he did just that, and the shots are really cool. So moments like that really made the difference to the show, and it was not micromanaging the crew, and I think giving them the freedom to create as they wanted to.
Awesome. Am I allowed to ask a second question?
Second question?
Awesome.
Sure.
And how are you able to, be able to tell a story through these games, and also have the competitive side as well? Like, how were you able to balance that out with storytelling and the competitiveness?
So in a show like this, the storytelling is one of the most difficult parts because we don't know what the story is. And that comes down to our philosophy of how we film it. Again, non-interference, authenticity is key through everything. So throughout the challenges, we genuinely don't interfere. We don't have them do things. So based on that, we don't know what the story is going to be because we have no idea who's going to win, who's going to make it to the top 10, any of that. So that comes down to post in the edit to find that story. The way they find it is tons and tons of coverage, of course, but really good notes. And that's why we had that army of people watching in the control room. Our story producers would vigorously take tons and tons of notes on everything that was happening so that we could reference it later once we were done. So you kind of, when it gets down, of course, when it gets down to the top 20 and that, you can kind of start seeing storylines. But until then, you genuinely have no idea. So you just kind of shoot a little bit of everything. And again, that's why it's important of everything that you do shoot throughout, you try to shoot it the best that you can, because it very well could be a key piece of footage later on.
So basically keep it as real, as authentic as possible, basically.
Yes.
Awesome.
And I understand that doesn't always work for shows, and that's fine. But that's the way we like to operate, is that our emotions you see from the contestants, our hosts, those type of things, those are all real. They really happened in those moments, whether people believe that or not. But it happened once, and it happened right then and there. And to me, that's really cool that we were still able to capture it the way we did.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, and again, this is a follow-up question from Kay in the film department, and she wants to know, was there anything different that you wanted to do for this particular project that maybe you didn't get to do?
Anything different? Yes. Oh my gosh. So the original amount of cameras that we had was the 43 cinematic bodies, that kind of thing. Originally I wanted 86, so double that. We had one cable cam in episode 1. I originally booked 5. So there was a lot of other equipment that I wanted to have in the show, and it just time and budget kind of didn't work out. And then I guess I would have hoped for a bit more conversational coverage throughout. Our players did kind of single out on their own as time went on. So it was a little interesting to do that. And then some more specialty shots. Realistically, I would have shot a lot more of those, but time was what it was, and we were moving. Also, for watching on, hi Mom. I think my mother's watching. So, but I hope that answers that question, because yes, there's always going to be something you want to do differently, and you think every night when I would get off the shoot, I would go to my hotel room and I couldn't go to sleep no matter how tired I was, because I would sit there and replay the day in my head and go, man, I wish I did that part differently. I wish I did that differently. And what can I do better the next day?
Thank you.
All right. Hey, Jason, so you touched on this a little bit in your presentation, but how did you eventually pick your film crew?
So the film crew, as we mentioned, that one piece of the crew came as part of a very specific skill set, the sports shooters, or at least that was the idea. Now I don't know if they actually came out with that. It looks like that's what happened, but the rest of the crew kind of had to rely on, I guess we went through and found a bunch of people from different areas, different skill sets, and there was a lot of recommendations. But ultimately, it was about meeting the people. I think the majority of our heads of departments and stuff, it was meeting them in person and kind of getting a personality check on them. Because to me, that was really, really important. More so than being the absolute best at your job, was that you were level-headed and had a good personality doing it. Because I know in the heat of the moment, when things get really, really crazy, I need to know I can come to you and you're not going to be a wild mess or freak out or overloaded with stress and kind of thing. So a lot of suggestions of people, references, that type of thing, but a lot of it too for specific job roles. Our Steadicam operator, for example, we use him a lot on the show. He's actually a really high-end Steadicam operator, but we used him on our main channel for a while. I got to know him, and I knew that when I brought him on the show, we were gonna probably beat him to death. He's gonna be rocking that Steadicam day in and day out. So I knew that that's not a normal thing that Steadicam operators do. They usually bust a shot out and get done. So I felt less guilty asking him to do it. Stay in the rig for much longer than he probably should have. So, and props to him. He didn't complain. He never complained at all. In episode 2, I think we went up and down that tower probably 50 times, and he carried the rig up there. And so a little bit of, I guess the crew came from all over the place, but I'm internally grateful for the crew that we had. I know I say that all the time, but they really did make all the difference in the world of being able to pull the show off. And I guess to that, outside of that, something I'll kind of go into really quick is, like I said, Canon brought me out here to do that, and it's like, well, why on earth did they do that? So Canon and I have actually had a really good relationship for a number of years now. We first started working with them early on at my time at the channel. And what I found out, and why I've enjoyed working with them so much, is because they're a brand that really cares about the final product. And I don't want to preach too much about brands, but as you guys get further on in your career, one of the things you will find is that brand partnerships are very important. They can help you out in a pinch. Last minute, you need some gear, which is how we ended up with that at the show, and they came through. Things break, you can call and get support, and more importantly is what's coming, what's upcoming, what's the future of the company, what's the future tech coming out, can I be creatively inspired from that? And so having that bit of relationship with a brand, to me, is super, super important. And one of the things I love about Canon, one, they were the beginning of the mirrorless revolution. If you guys know anything about camera history, with the 5D Mark II, kind of kicked off a whole new crazy world that we're in now. But they know that it takes the best tool for the job, and I'm always about use the best tool for the job. So I don't always use their stuff, but they're cool with that, and they're still down to work with me even when I don't. And as you know, most of the show was shot on Alexas throughout, and to me it wasn't the Alexa 35, which is what we have here. It was the Alexa Mini, which is a few generations older, and some Amiras even. But those tools are what made sense for that job, and they were really cool to work with me on that, and still hook us up with some lenses and that type of stuff too, which together I think made a really, really good package for the show, and I think it all turned out really beautifully. So I can't say thank you enough to Canon for that. I've enjoyed working with them for a number of years, as well as other brands too. I work with a lot of them, and I've always felt that building those relationships is super important along your career paths, no matter which direction you go into, whether you go into cinematography, audio, directing, producing, whatever. Meet your brands, meet the people. They are people. I know it looks like a big giant company, but there are people that work there, and there are people that you can talk to and get to know, and they're usually pretty cool. So, and I think we're almost out of time. How much time do we have left? A minute. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I'll just say thank you, everyone, for coming out. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to head out to the creative experience. I'll be out there for probably 30 minutes if you want to chat a little one-on-one. And for everyone online, again, if you have other questions, find me on LinkedIn or social media. I'm happy to answer any of those questions as you can. Otherwise, hopefully I'll see you guys at the 2 o'clock session or out in the creative experience. So any quick last 30 seconds? Thank you, everyone.